I love working with twin needles or double needles, however you want to call them. But on the Pfaff Quilt Expression 720, it actually has a setting that we can tell the machine when we put a specialty needle on like this, so it knows not to go further off the edge of the foot and break my needle. So needles have different sizes on them. The distance between the two needles, like this one is a 2.0 twin needle, so they're fairly close together. You can get them in 2.5, 3.0. There's lots of different widths. You can go up, even on this machine, to 8.0. Those almost look like fangs, but you can do top stitching very beautifully. You can do cover stitch look or simulate the look of cover stitch, which is what you see on the edge of your t-shirts. But I'm going to actually show you one extra thing you can do with a twin needle is do decorative stitches. Now, to get the most bang for your buck for decorative stitches, use the smaller needle width. Now, the only thing is it also tells you a size 80. So that means that these are only 80 size needles. So make sure you don't put too thick of thread in them. Now, you are going to need two places for thread. So you're going to have your regular thread, which, by the way, go ahead and unthread the machine completely. I have a second spool. This is a fairly heavy spool, even though it's mostly used up. I am a fan of a thread stand. So I'm going to put this over here, run it up to the top, and then it's going to come over with my first spool when I lay it down. Now, the thing with thread stands, don't leave any thread unattended or dangling when it's not in use. It will go ahead and get stuck in the hand wheel. That's not a pretty sight. That's a whole nother class as it is. Now, when you thread the machine, do make sure your presser foot is up like always, and you're going to start like normal. Now, right here when you come down the front of your machine, if you stand up, you'll probably notice there's been a little fin in here, a little sticking up piece of metal. And some of my students ask me, well, which side do I need to thread on? Well, it doesn't matter when it's just one thread, but when you have two threads, what we're going to do is we're going to separate them and drop one on the right side of it and one on the left. And then that way, each of the threads gets its own tension. Now, right about here, I'm going to hold on to both those threads and even back up here and give them a little floss. I could feel them kind of get sunk down in those tension discs. Remember, if you don't do that, that's when you get those threads and thread nests on the back of your fabric. Now, as I get down here, one of the last things is I'm going to put my needle in, and my needle threader will not work. So if you'll need to thread them manually. Doesn't matter which of the two threads goes in which needle, so just pick one and put it in. A small handheld needle threader might be a nice addition at this point. So I'm going to go ahead and put my needle in, and then I'm going to show you how to set the machine to know how to limit all my stitches so my needle doesn't break. So I've threaded the needle. Next, before I do any stitching, go into the settings menu and click on the straight and zigzag. Choose twin needle. It says off right now. And I decided to put a 2.0 twin needle on, so I'll choose that one. You saw the choices here, so all those sizes are available for this machine. But watch what happens. When I touch OK, I will now see every stitch as a twin needle stitch. So that means if I pick a fun stitch like this, it's going to show what it looks like virtually stitched out with that size of needle. Let me show you why I said that if you have a, let's go into, we'll pick a stitch, we'll go into the settings. If you pick the smallest size, now there is a 1.6 twin needle, that's good too, versus a wider twin needle. So if I pick 4.0, and we'll pick that same fun decorative stitch, you'll see, well actually that one looks good both ways. But sometimes, here let's pick, for example, a zigzag. That's at the wider setting, but at the one we're going to stitch it at, it overlaps a little bit. So there's definitely some more dramatic look to decorative stitches when they have a further distance to go. It'll also limit the stitch width and width here. So once it gets up to 7, because this machine sews 9 millimeters, we put a 2.0 twin needle on, so 9 minus 2 equals 7. You'll see that all your stitches max out at that point. But look how fun these stitches can be. Let's just even travel to some decorative stitches. You know, some are going to look better than others. Satin stitches might be a little heavy in some point, but ooh, there's always stitches that are going to have a whole new look once you stitch them with a twin needle. Remember that stitch book we talked about doing? you'll find that if you were to go back and redo all your stitches, it's going to totally look different if you stitch them all with a twin needle. So here's how I'm going to have you do it. Usually once I get a twin needle threaded, I'm going to stitch slowly and just make sure everything sounds good. Once your machine sounds good, you are able to use the thread snips with a twin needle. Love that. So you can continue as normal. And I actually put some variegated thread in. So let's just pick a decorative stitch. Let's do this one here. Again, I can just pick a stitch and sew. I don't have to worry about my stitch width. It will always limit it for me. But let me get a little bit more stitching because this thread is actually kind of fun to see as it changes colors. I have a bright pink and a variegated. So the color combination is endless when you start to stitch out the different stitches. So see how fun that actually can be. Let's do, how about we'll just, and again, I just randomly pick stitches. Sometimes I love them, sometimes maybe not so much. But how about, oh fun. Oh my gosh, there's always so many different ones. How about the little Greek key? We'll see what that looks like with all the different colors playing around in it. So once again, different, oh goodness, that actually looks like a courthouse steps. I would have never known that, but that is a great stitch. I'll have to keep that in mind. Now again, if I had a different size of twin needle, that would have not looked the same. I'm gonna have to do something with that. Huh, look at that. I discovered something that I love today just by randomly pressing stitches when I had a twin needle in the machine. So I hope you're surprised by the stitches you can do. We also use this with pin tucks, is a twin needle selection and a pin tuck foot. We do a lot of pin tucks and double needle decorative stitches in the Stitching Cosmos online course. I hope you'll check that out and see all the possibilities that you can do with just switching over to 2 needles. When you're done, don't forget to turn it off, and then that way you'll be back to a single needle stitching. Of course, once I turn it off, make sure you actually take the needle out, and don't forget to put a new needle in. I bet it's time. All right, thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the next video.